Leviticus 25. Some kind of familiar passages, some familiar themes, so that part's good. But there's also some cool stuff that goes on in here, so we'll try to hit those also. So every chapter in Leviticus kind of starts out with the Lord speaking to Moses somewhere to somebody, right? And so this one, last couple chapters, it's been to Aaron and the priests, and last week, regarding some of the laws in the tabernacle. So this week, chapter 25, and the Lord spake to Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, so they're still in the wilderness, but they're not going to be in the tabernacle. They're just going to be back on the mount, and this is all kind of stuff directly to Israel, but it's still a few more laws and some more of God's grace that He shows to the people in different situations. So I copied this from someplace. Leviticus 25 lays out 2 mega Sabbaths for Israel in the land. The Sabbath year, which is every 7th year, and the year of Jubilee, which is every 50th year. These laws reorder time, land, work, and wealth around rest, trust, redemption, and restoration. God uses these rhythms to remind Israel that the land is His, the people are His, and no Israelite is meant to be trapped forever in debt, slavery, or loss. If you ever get to a discussion with somebody about the Bible and they say, "Yeah, I just can't follow the Bible because it talks about it's okay with slavery. It's okay with slavery. God's okay with slavery." And if you just read it and you're not careful, you could fall into that by the words in the translation. Now, King James uses the word bondservant a lot of times, which is different than a slave, right? So when we think slavery, we immediately go back to the idea of someone who was taken from their land, kidnapped, if you will, sold into, permanent servitude. A bondservant is not that. A bondservant is someone who recognized their situation. They're in debt. They can't pay their debts. Something catastrophic has happened. And they basically sold themselves into, we can call it slavery, servitude, to pay off the debt. So whenever you see the word bondservant, that's kind of what it's referring to. And then in this chapter, God's going to give some laws about how you treat bondservants and how you can treat slaves. Now, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but depending on which translation you have, if it says ESV, I think uses the word slave. But it's not like we think of slavery. It's not roots. It's not the early American slavery. It was more of a way of paying off the debt. We don't have debtor's prison anymore, right? I can't sell you. I can't make you come to my house and live with me and pay off your debt that way. But they could do that back in the biblical times, and that's sort of what some of this is going to be referring to. All right. Anyway, let's look at the first seven verses, and it talks about the Sabbath. Now, when we think of Sabbath, what do we think of? Some day of the week, right? Which is designed for what?
Rest.
And we have to be careful when we jump to that answer. God rested on the 7th day, and that's kind of where we get the idea of the Sabbath from. But for the people, it wasn't mostly about the rest as much as it was about remembering that God had given you everything you needed to work for those 6 days. So yes, we need to rest, and we need that time away to disengage, but it's more along the lines of remembering who God is and what He is to us.
The book I just started reading about the Sabbath talks about the Sabbath is really a day to acknowledge the Creator.
Right. Yes.
So that was an interesting way to think about it, and it's not so much like a...
And the reason I want us to remember or to recognize it's not just about rest is because what we're going to read here in these first few verses. Verse 2, speaking to the children of Israel and saying to them, when you come into the land which I give you. Now remember, this is some of these laws that God has handed down are like, starting today, you do it this way, right? This that He's talking about here, when you come into the land. Well, what land? What land? The promised land. Thank you. So when you get to the promised land, this is what's going to, this is going to be the kind of the way you do it. Now, these people won't get to the promised land, right? They've wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. They don't ever get there. But when you get there, when you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land. A Sabbath, why? For the Lord. Not for you, not for the land, it's for the Lord, right? Because you're going to stop and you're going to thank him for what he's done. Now, some people would say, well, that means God is kind of he needs our affirmation. No, he doesn't need our affirmation. But as a parent, as a brother, as a sister, isn't it nice when somebody comes and affirms you? Especially when they don't have to do it, right? Guys, if you get your wife flowers only on Mother's Day, try some other day of the year and just see how much better it is, right? If you have to do it, that's good. But if you just do it because you want to, that's better. So he says, the 7th year is a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. Now, if it was all just about rest, instead of taking an entire year off, couldn't we just divide our land up into sevenths and leave 1/7 alone every year? And then every 7th year, we will have given the land its rest and everything will be fine. That's not what God said to do. God said, work for 6 years, take the 7th year off. Yeah, but God, what am I going to eat for the 7th year? And he tells them, if you do it my way, the 6th year, you'll get a crop so big, it'll cover you through the 7th year. I will take care of you. Don't worry about it. If he was only about resting the land, then the 1/7 idea works just fine. But that's not what God said. Because it's not just about the rest. It's about trusting God to give you what you need, not what you want. We don't always get what we want, but we always get what we need. And I'm pretty sure if we try hard enough, we can make that into a song.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody work on that for me. Right? So, but the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vineyard undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land. So that doesn't mean you can't pick those foods. You just don't harvest it the way you would normally do. And so what he's talking about there is,
You can go out and get a ear of corn for dinner, but you can't.
yes, you cannot go out there and go, hey, look, 3 rows came up this year. Let's go cut all those things down and put those, that's not what he's talking about. Because everything that comes up during that Sabbath year is for everybody. It's for everybody, including the animals. God says, don't worry, I'll take care of you. You'll get enough for what you need. Yeah, but God, do you trust me or don't you? Do you trust me or don't you? And if you don't, well then go do it your way. But if you do, I'll take care of you. And that's, and we know historically, that's one of the main reasons that Israel was destroyed. They were conquered and taken captive. We almost always say because of idolatry and disobedience, right? But disobedience that's a carpet word. Mm-hmm. What did they disobey in? The main thing, if you study it, is the Sabbath. They didn't do this. How many years did they not do this? They did not do it enough years for God to say, I'm getting my Sabbath back. You owe me 70. That's a lot. That's a lot. And that's why they were captive in Babylon for 7 years. Verse 6. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, and for thy servant, and for thy maid, and for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourn with thee. Verse 7. And for thy cattle, and for the beasts that are in thy land, shall all the increase thereof be meat. So in other words, that 1 year, everything that comes up feeds everything. You're like, well, how is that possible? God does the impossible. You can't, I can't, he can. Just do it his way. Yeah, but it doesn't look like it's going to work out. I understand. That's why God says, trust me. Right? When did the manna come?
When it was.
Every night while they were sleeping, that's when it came down. When they woke up, it was there. So when they went to bed, what did they have?
Nothing.
The promise. That's it. When you go to bed and things don't look like they're going to work out, what do you have? The promise. What do we normally do? Work our own solution out. Mm-hmm. We don't generally give God a chance for him to solve the problem because we try to solve it ourselves. Mm-hmm. And just like with Jonah, when he tried to solve the problem, I'm not going to Nineveh, I'm going to Tarshish. He ended up in the belly of a whale or fish, however you want to call it, right? Mm-hmm. And so God sometimes has to even mess up your plan, which makes it even worse to get you back where he wants you. And so now, again, I am not a prosperity guy. I am not just be obedient and your life will be smooth sailing, right? Our life We like for it to be the canoe on the pond. What is it? It's the rowboat in the rapids. Go to Hebrews chapter 11, go to verse 34 through 36, and read that about all those people who still had faith, but weren't saved. They weren't spared from death. They still died, sawn asunder, torn in two. God, how could you do that? God's the creator. He can do what he wants. He promises to take care of you, but as Paul said, for me to live is Christ, but to die is gain. So sometimes in our life, God says, I'm gonna give you the best answer possible. And the cancer comes back terminal, right? And you say, God, how could you do that? Well, it's appointed a man wants to die. We're not living forever. So if we start with that, we're not living forever. Okay, then how do I die? Asleep at the age of 94? Maybe, for some people. Others, you go to the cemetery, there's graves that are this big. How could that baby, God, how could you have done that to that baby? This is a temporary place. Sojourner and strangers, those words we see, this is temporary. We're not here forever. So however God wants to take us out, in some cases, terrible motorcycle accidents, right? We don't get to choose necessarily how we're going. God does that for us. But even in that, if we are being obedient to him, and it's a terrible ending to our life, that's how God wanted it to be. And that's okay. And that we have to be okay with that. If we're not, that's when we don't live in the promise. And it's difficult. Trust me, it's easy to say it. It's hard to do it. I agree with you. I agree. Sometimes I go to bed and I'm like, all right, God, here's what we're doing tomorrow. And I remember that's probably not his plan. He probably has a better one. If I can just wait, right? But he sings that song. God sees the storm from the other side. You know, on this side, you've been driving down the road, right? Like all this sunshine, you look over there, it's like downpour. You're in the drive, but you see the rain over there. You're on this side of the storm. And it's a much better place to be. But sometimes when you're in the storm, you still have the promise. All right, so that's the Sabbath. So we know about Sabbath every seventh day, and now God is saying, no, I'm going to Sabbath every seventh year also. And then now we see another Sabbath, if you will, another mega Sabbath, as this commentator called it. And thou shalt number 7 Sabbath of years, so every 7th year is a Sabbath. And now 7 Sabbaths will be at the end of the 49th year, which is the 50th year. And the space of 7 Sabbaths of a year shall be unto thee 40 and 9 years. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound in the 10th day of the 7th month. In the Day of Atonement shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. So they did a Day of Atonement every year on the 10th day of the 7th month. But on this 50th year, if you will, it was a special Day of Atonement, a special year. And it was called the Year of Jubilee, or that's how it's been translated into English. And you shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and you shall return every man unto his possession, and you shall return every man unto his family. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes of the undressed. So here's a new idea. So every 7th year you didn't plant anything. You just let God take care of you. At the 7th of those 7th years, right, you just finished the Sabbath year and you're like, let's get back to work. God says, no, this is the 50th year. This is the Jubilee year. This is another Sabbath year. Hang on, God. You said the 6th year would cover me for the 7th year. Well, what covers me for the 50th year? And he goes on to tell us, if you obey me, that 6th year, which leads into the Jubilee year, will cover you for 3 years. You'll be good. The 6th year will give you enough for the 6th, the 7th, and the 7th, again, the 50th year, and you'll be fine. Don't worry. That's my promise. Did somebody ever promise you and you're like, yeah, I know they promised. I know they said they were going to do that. Let me text them just to make sure. Right? Let me text them just to make sure that.
But it does depend on the person. Like there are people that if they say, I will do this, you don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why God reminded them to tell your children.
Yes.
How I brought you out of Egypt. Remember, yes. I am trustworthy.
It's interesting so here in Leviticus 25, we learn about this year of Jubilee. You can study the rest of the Bible, and you don't see one piece of evidence that they actually followed through. There's not a single story about God's goodness in the year of Jubilee. Now, does that mean they didn't do it? Don't know. We do know they fell away from the Sabbath year. So my guess is if they fell away from the Sabbath year, they also probably weren't following the year of Jubilee. Because there's a lot more that goes into the year of Jubilee. So that we kind of read it, but again, if you're just reading the Bible, sometimes you skip over something. Look at verse 10 again. And you shall return every man unto his possession, and you shall return every man unto his family. The idea here is, again, if you get so poor, and you like, this is year 3 and the crops just didn't come out like they were supposed to, or I got late and didn't get them in the ground, or it was a drought, something happened, and we don't have enough food, and we've sold everything we have. What are we going to do? Well, I can sell myself into servitude to help cover the cost of living for my family. Well, how long do I stay in servitude? Well, it depends, and it depended on how much I needed and the person I'm selling myself to. But God says here, in the year of Jubilee, everybody goes back to their family. Everyone who had to sell themselves into servitude, bondservant, not slavery, everyone who sold themselves into servitude had to be released back. Wait a minute, he hadn't paid off his debt yet.
It's to be forgiven.
Well, you forgive his debt. The year of Jubilee, you forgive all debts, you turn everybody back.
The land goes back.
The land goes back. Yeah, if I sold a piece of property because I needed some money and I had a piece of property, I could sell that. It comes back. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes into the, so again,
To your family.
to the family. Yeah. Because remember, when God gives out, and again, this is when you get into the promised land, right? So this isn't right now we're wandering in the wilderness. This isn't applicable then. It's when you get into the promised land. God is going to give the land to every person, every tribe. He says, this is your inheritance. The land is mine. It's not yours. I'm giving it to you to be a steward over my land. So if you decide you want to sell it, it's still mine. And eventually, in the year of Jubilee, I want it to be given back to the tribe to whom I've given it to. So that the tribe, the family always had something. They always had something. And if, for whatever reason, you sold a piece of property and then things turned around. You're like, hey, we got money now. Let's go buy that piece of land back. So if I sold it, and let's say there's 4 years until Jubilee, and you've owned it for 2 years, I don't have to pay you for the full, current market value, because it's not my land, it's not your land, it's God's land. I take into consideration what you've already earned off of it, because you've taken the land, you've probably raised your own crops, and the 2 years you're going to miss until Jubilee, which you have to give back to me anyway, I can redeem that. I can buy it back from you. And so that whole idea of the Jubilee kind of was a stop block, and everything kind of worked its way up to that. If you say, it's 1 year after Jubilee, and I had to sell a piece of property, and I don't know if I'll ever get it back. I owe so much, I don't know if I'll ever get it back. Well, if something turned around, and you could buy it back to, there's still 30 more years to Jubilee, that went into the price of what you had to pay to get it back. And so that idea of redemption is, it's early in the life of Israel. They're not even in the promised land yet. And we can see that same idea over in the New Testament with Jesus, right? Because he was our Redeemer, and he paid the price that we couldn't pay. He bought it back from us. Now, there's also, jump down to verse 25, and there's a kind of a little wiggle here in the picture. If thy brother be, and this is King James, if the brother be waxen poor, if thy brother be waxen poor and hath sold away some of his possession, and if any of his kin, y'all know what kin is, right? That's your cousins and your uncles and your aunts, your kinfolk, come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold. So the idea here is that you have a kinsman redeemer. You can't redeem it yourself, but somebody in your family is doing very, very well. They could buy the land back for you. Give me the example in the Old Testament.
Ruth and Boaz.
Yes, Ruth and Boaz. Interestingly enough, if you read that story again, they actually had a kinsman who was closer in relation than Boaz.
Mm-hmm.
And
he said, I don't want it.
why did he not want it? Why did he not want to do that? I got to take Ruth too.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll get you your land back, but I got to take her too? Ugh. I don't know what she looked like. we were at a wedding yesterday, and we're sitting there waiting for it to start, and had nobody seen the bride yet. I said, I think she got cold feet. I think she's leaving. Just kidding.
He's bad about
I'm
saying
bad
that.
about that. But so we were sitting there waiting. We're like, where did that tradition come from? Where you don't see the bride before, right? So we looked it up, and apparently it goes all the way back, and we're going to see it in the biblical times too, where when marriages were arranged, and the father of the bride was usually the one who was doing the arranging, right? So he would arrange a marriage, and in a lot of cases, the kids didn't even know each other. And you're not going to see her until the wedding. And because if you see her, you may go, no thanks. And you might back out. So that's where the tradition comes from. And the idea of the veil, that was to make it even a little bit longer, right? So now I brought her into the ceremony, but she's still fully covered. You're like, this is probably not good for me, right? And who does that remind you of in the Bible?
Leah.
Jacob and Leah, right? I mean, Jacob didn't know he got Leah until after the ceremony,
Until
right?
the next day.
Yes.
And the next morning.
Yes. Like, whoa, hang on a second. I mean, that's when you say, we're going to have a 10 o'clock wedding. Why are you having a 10 o'clock wedding? It's going to be dark outside. Yep. Man, yeah. Need that to happen. Total darkness, right? So,
Sometimes the guy should have been wearing a veil too, alright?
Oh.
absolutely, positively, probably sure. However,
They both
no
need
matter
to
how
be-
ugly he is, he can always find a job. In biblical times, and even early, outside of biblical times, the woman, they were just property. They couldn't just go out and get a new job and take care of themselves. They were relying on somebody to take care of them.
Because it's not really related to our lesson, but I read about a king, and they were always making arrangements for political purposes. And they brought her over, and he's like, she's ugly, I won't marry her.
King Henry VIII.
They should have made her wear a veil.
Exactly. Should
And
have
then-
covered that face, and yes, exactly right.
Politics would have.
So Ruth and Boaz is a very, that's one that jumps to our mind about the kinsman redeemer, but there was actually a closer kinsman who decided, I'm not redeeming because of the responsibilities, which I then started looking into and started doing some research. The closest kinsman had and the way the phrase was a God-given responsibility, if he could, to redeem, but nothing in the law punished him if he didn't. Which I think is also kind of cool for us, because there are so many things that God wants us to do, but he gives us that free will.
And there's a blessing in it if you follow it. It kind of leads to the question, like, what if he had?
Exactly. Yeah.
What kind of blessings would
If
have
we
been
know his
given?
name and not Boaz.
I mean, so we're sitting here today because of what Adam and Eve did in the garden,
Yeah.
right? And then what the Israelites did with the golden calf on Mount Sinai, right? And then what they did for all these years. And then this is what the result has been. But what if in the Garden of Eden, they had just done what God had asked them to do? We may not be here, but that wouldn't matter because we wouldn't be here, right? But how much better would have God's creation had turned out if they had just been obedient? Which kind of then gets back to us. My gosh, if I would just be obedient, if I would just take God's promises and say, I'm doing that, God. I'm doing that. It's difficult. I'm not saying it's not, but this year of Jubilee kind of brings the circle back and says, even if you had to go into servitude, a bondservant, slavery, if you will, then if you were in Israel, you had to release those people. You had to release that land back to the family. Go ahead.
There's hope.
Yes, there's absolutely hope. There's absolutely hope. Now, he did, if you had a slave from an other nation, this Jubilee wasn't applicable to them. This is to the Jews. This is only to Israel. So if you had a slave from a Canaanite or from a Amalekite or whatever it was, they did not get released back. But God does put a lot of different verses in play where he says, even if you have a slave, if you have a servant, you have to treat them with respect, right? Again, our idea of what slavery is all about is not what God said you had. It's almost completely opposite of how God said, you're going to have them, you got to do this with them. You got to treat them with respect. You got to take care of them. You treat them as if they're almost as if they're family. And so when somebody who's an atheist or an agnostic and says, yeah, but the Bible supports slavery, they're taking the one word, putting their idea of what that word means, and they're glossing over the rest of God's laws about it. All right. So that's kind of the year of Jubilee. Interesting thing about it, let's go back to the seventh year Sabbath. I found this quote from a guy named Rooker, and I found some history that this is actually a true statement. Because sometimes you read something like, I can't believe that, but I did more research and found that it's true. His words, and this is a really strange word for me. I would never use this word in a sentence. In the intertestamental period,
Okay.
whatever that word means. Intertestamental period. Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar remitted Israel's taxes during sabbatical years. Alexander the Great, no friend of God. Julius Caesar, no friend of God. But they so respected what Israel was supposed to be doing that those who actually were following it, they would just give their taxes back to them. That's a pretty good tax return right there, right? God didn't say that's how he would take care of them, but that's how God took care of some of them.
He did not say it either.
Say again?
But he did not say it.
He did not say it, exactly. So you have to be good with it, right? All right. So look at verse 18 real quick. We'll just kind of jump back and then we'll finish up. Wherefore you shall do my statutes and keep my judgments and do them, and you shall dwell in the land in safety. Again, this is the promise that's coming when you get to the land. You're not there yet. And the land shall yield her fruit, and you shall eat your fill, and dwell therein in safety. And if ye shall say, what shall we eat the seventh year? Behold, we shall not sow nor gather in our increase. Then I will command my blessing upon you for the sixth year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years. That's that Jubilee year. And you shall sow the 8th year, and eat yet of old fruit until the 9th year, until her fruits come in, and you shall eat of the old store. And the land shall not be sold forever. This is the idea of giving it back to the families. For the land is mine, ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And in all land of your possession you shall grant redemption for the land. So that's that perfect idea of redemption. And that Jesus, when he came, he was the perfect redeemer, and he is the closest kinsman redeemer we have. And he willingly paid the price for us to get to buy us back. David Guzik said, "If we obey God, even when it doesn't make sense, we can trust he will provide our every need. If we seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, all those practical things will be added unto us." So when we think, I don't know how God's going to make this thing happen, that's not your responsibility. Right? When someone says, I promise I'll do that, you don't say, how are you going to do it? If you trust them, they'll get it done. If we trust Mark,
I don't trust Mark.
he's not trustworthy. Right? Don't worry, I'll figure it out when I get over there. You probably won't. You probably won't. You'll deal with it when you get over there. You probably won't figure it out, right? But God knows already. He'd have to figure it out. That's the beauty of God, right? He'd have to figure it out.
It's gonna be that moment he comes back. It's like, you guys were right. I'm so sorry.
No,
That's how this happens.
that's how that's going to end. All right. Where are we going to jump to? Let's see if we can't jump. Go down to 29. And if a man sell a dwelling house in a walled city, that he may redeem it within a whole year after it's sold. Within a full year may he redeem it. Now there's some different laws coming into play here. So if you own land outside the walled city, so outside of Jerusalem, outside of wherever you were, it is considered, the house, the farm, it's considered the land. If you have a house inside of a walled city, you don't have any farmland with that. You basically have, it's a townhouse sort of situation. You got the house. And if you have to sell that piece of property because you don't have any other way of making a living, you have 1 year to redeem it back. 1 year. If you can't redeem it back within 1 year, then it leaves it's not yours. You don't get it back into your Jubilee. The walled city is kind of a different set of regulations than the land. So that walled city, it now becomes a new owner. You can't ever get it back. If you have a village outside the city, you have a farm outside the city, you have a small house outside the city, that goes back to your Jubilee, and you can redeem it back anytime, or a kinsman redeemer can come back and redeem it at any time. So that was the difference for the non-Levites. Now, if you're a Levite, and God has special property for them also, so they had special cities set up for them, they could redeem it at any time. So there was no 1 year limitation. They could do it at any time. So the Levites, if you will, they get special treatment, and that's okay. God can do whatever he wants to, and that's what we're going to see here in these laws, is that God treats the Levites a little bit differently than he does the normal person. But if you're inside the city, you get 1 year.
So if you were to sell it, it
Yep.
would more like be a rental contract for you.
So it's like a
and then-
lease. It's like a 1-year lease,
And then it could be yours.
and then it just
if
transfers
I
over.
choose not
Yes.
to.
You ever do a rent to own?
Yeah,
Don't ever do that. You know,
heard of it, never done it.
yes, you can rent to own almost anything. Where I grew up, my cousin worked for a rent
Rent a
called
center?
Rack Rent a Center, and I helped him one day deliver a sofa. And we were talking as we were driving to this place. I'm like, "They're really renting a sofa?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "How much do they pay each month for this thing?" He was like, $50.
Wait,
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
Rent to own, isn't that just the normal?
It is, except that usually with rent to own, here's a $300 sofa. I'm gonna charge you $50 a month for 12 months. Well, that's $600. Yep. You're gonna pay a lot more.
Apply to everything though, like a car note, that's rent to own.
That's not really rent to
If
own.
you mess with payment,
Rent to own, if you, now, yes, from a practical aspect, yes, sort of. Except that you're not really renting that from the dealership, right? You actually, if you buy a car,
yeah, but
You
if you miss the
lease
payment, you
Yep.
get repoed, so
Yep.
technically
Yep.
you are
The dealership
renting
doesn't
it.
repo it, the bank does.
Yeah.
right, you're
You're
borrowing
borrowing
money
money
from the bank.
not from the dealership.
Now, dealerships do have financing, but it's because they have a bank side of them. So again, from a practical perspective, yes. But if you actually go to a rent-to-own store, a rent-a-center, so practically speaking, yes, you are correct. Everything you buy on payments, you're kind of renting it, and then eventually you own it.
Yeah.
But if you go to a real, legit, in the sign, rent-a-center, you're gonna pay twice the value if you rent to own.
Oh.
It's usually designed for lesser income or
Exactly.
poor credit.
I'll never have $300. Will you ever have $50? I got $50 every month. Here's what I'm gonna do for you. I'm gonna charge you $50, but it's gonna be for 12 months. Yeah, but that's $600. Yep. Say again?
You might as well just save.
Yes, save it. Yes, absolutely.
Practical
Hey.
side.
Well, that's
Why
the
do
logical
why do people
But
not
when
do
you
that?
have-
Well,
when you
that's a
have,
great
those
question.
Teenagers that don't want to listen to anybody because they know everything, they fall for the Rent-A-Center trap.
We know everything.
Anyway, getting back to this. If you sold your house, you have 1 year. It was a 1-year lease basically. If you didn't redeem it back in 1 year, the ownership changed hands. And then you couldn't get it back after 1 year. The Levites, slightly different. They could get theirs back at any time. Look down at verse 32. Notwithstanding the cities of the Levites and the houses of the cities in their possession, they may redeem those at any time. So even if they had to sell it for whatever reason, they could get it back. If they could ever afford to buy it back, they could do that at any time, not just 1 year. 1 year was only for non-Levites in a walled city. If you had land, non-Levite had land outside of the city, then you could redeem it back at any time, or at the year of Jubilee, it would come back to you. All right? You see that in verse 32 through 34. Look at 35, we see again, and if thy brother be waxen poor and fall into decay with thee, then shalt thou relieve him, yea, though he be a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with thee. So you could take him in, you could, he becomes your servant, if you will, because he couldn't pay. Take thou no usury from that. Word usury, verse 36, is interest. So Jews weren't allowed to charge each other interest either. And I saw this.
Does this mean like brother, like, oh, you're my kid, like my fellow American's my brother, or is this like, no, this is my brother from my mother? What kind of brother are we talking here?
So for this, any Israelite. So an Israelite, a Jew, could not charge interest to any other Jew. Period. God said so. If he's outside the Jewish nation, then you could charge him interest. But if it's a Jew, you can't, because it gets back to the rent center thing. He can't afford the payment, and now you can try to put interest on top of him. All it's going to do is put him in such a big hole, he's going to become a permanent servant, and we don't want that.
Don't they still follow that practice?
They do sort of, yeah. I mean, the Orthodox Jews kind of try to
lend directly to each other,
Yep,
no
yep,
interest.
Yep. I found this quote from David Guzik. In the medieval Europe, Christians often refused to loan money at interest because of these biblical laws against usury. So again, this doesn't apply to us. This is the Jewish nation when they get to the promised land. We are not under this old covenant, we're under grace. So this doesn't apply to us. But in this idea, some European Christians said we're going to follow that. Motivated by hatred of the Jews, Christians often pushed Jewish people into occupations that were thought of as low and inferior, collecting taxes and rents and money lending.
And
And
now
you
they're
think-
very well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like these Christians are like, well, we can't charge interest, so we're going to make those guys do it, right? So they can charge it, and we can take it from them because then we're okay, right? Christians thought of these occupations as necessary evils and thought to make the Jews bear the evil of the necessity. Yet because of this, Jewish people in medieval Europe dominated many aspects of banking and financial business, which often made them more envied and resented by the Christians of Europe. Which, you know, if you talk to anybody and you say, well, where are all the Jewish people doing their business? Well, they're the bankers, right? We actually read a book, Thou Shalt Prosper. Thou Shalt Prosper. And it was a Jewish rabbi who said, I've always heard that we Jews are so good in business. I want to figure out why. So he started like researching all the way back, you know, into the Torah and stuff. And he said his conclusion was, A, God's blessed us, you know, number one. But two, everything we did as an act of service. And if you're going to serve someone, you want to be the very best servant possible. So when they got forced into these sort of roles, they just did their very best to be great servants. And they became very prosperous at it because of God's blessing. And if you're good at something, why leave it? And so he said that's kind of how the Jewish people got the stereotype of they're just good in finance because they were forced to do it, God prospered them, and they want to be good servants. And I thought that was interesting. What the European Christians thought of, we're going to kind of punish them and make them do these horrible jobs. God said, okay, I'll just bless my people.
Like
Right.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Or Joseph.
We're not gonna eat.
Joseph, yep. I mean, when he was in Potiphar's house, right? He was a slave, but everything he touched prospered, and God
What you
prospered
intended
it.
for evil, God intended for good.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's keep going. Look down at verse 39, see if we can't finish this up. 39. And if thy brother that dwelleth by thee be waxen poor and sold unto thee, thou shalt not compel him to serve as bondservant, but as a hired servant, as a sojourner, he shall be with thee and shall serve thee unto the year of Jubilee. So there's that idea again. You're not permanently taking him, but it's just a temporary time until either he pays himself out of debt or the year of Jubilee. Both he and, verse 41, both he and his children with him, and shall return unto his own family, and to his possession of his father shall he return. For they are my servants. God says, they are my servants, which I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as bondmen. You cannot sell them into slavery as permanent servitude, because they belong to me. Thou shalt not rule over him with rigor, but shalt fear thy God. Again, if you're doing this because God directed you to do it, now you want to do it the right way so that God isn't upset with you. Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, which thou shalt have, shall be both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, which thou shalt have, shall be of heathen that are round about you. Of them shall ye buy bondmen and bondmaids. So if you need a permanent slave, you go outside of Israel. You do not do that inside. You take them outside. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall ye buy, and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land, they shall be your possession. So yes, you can own them permanently, but not your own brothers, not your own Israelite brothers, only those who are outside. But again, that idea of slavery is not what we think of as today. It's more of a permanent job, if you will. Indentures, what's your day?
Indentured servant. Indentured servant.
Back in the, I guess,
16,
at the end
1700s.
of slavery time when slaves got freed, so they lost all their free labor, right? You could rent the land to a family and they could work it and you get half of the crops. That idea, same sort of thing. They're not permanent slaves and you kind of take care of them and you give them a way to take care of themselves. Let's jump down and let's finish up verse 47. If a sojourner or stranger wax by thee and thy brother that dwell, see, very similar words over and over again, right? Because this is how God is saying we're going to take care of those people who can't take care of themselves. Verse 48, and after he is sold, he may be redeemed. Again, one of his brethren may redeem him. That's that kinsman redeemer idea. Either his uncle or his uncle's son may redeem him, or any that is nigh of kin unto him of his family may redeem him, or if he is able, he may redeem himself. Because it's possible that if he saves all his money while he's paying off and he stays there a little bit longer, right? Remember that's another idea of this bondservant is I've kind of sold myself to pay off my debt, but this dude is such a good master, I just want to stay here permanently.
That's when
I
you
just
take
want
his
to stay.
ear
Right, yep.
and you nail
And
it.
they put that all through the ear, and that was the sign that he was a bondservant. And then he just keeps making money, gives it back to the family, and they become very prosperous outside because of the work he's doing inside. So God had all these provisions in place, and if they would just do them, God said, I will bless you. Look at verse 51. If there be yet many years behind, according unto them, he shall give again the price of his redemption out of the money that he was bought for. And if there remain but a few years unto the year of Jubilee, then he shall count with him, and according to his years shall he give him again the price of redemption. There's how that year of Jubilee was the backstop of what the cost was to redeem something. Verse 53, and as a yearly hired servant shall he be with him, and the other shall not rule with vigor over him in any sight. You can't treat him poorly. And if he be not redeemed in these years, then he shall go out in the year of Jubilee, both he and his children with him. For unto me the children of Israel are servants. God reminding them, you are servants to me. I bought you from Egypt. I brought you out of there. You belong to me. For unto me the children of Israel are servants. They are my servants whom I brought forth the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Questions? Anybody?
Not yet.
All right. We got one more quick, but we're going to skip it. And we're going to pose prayer. And so we thank you for the day. We thank you for the study. We thank you for the reminder of your goodness. We thank you, God, for your reminder of your promise that you will always take care of the Jewish people, Lord, but in looking into grace and the ministry of Jesus, God, you always take care of us also. Lord, you said if you would take care of the sparrow, then you would definitely take care of us. We just pray, God, that you give us the faith, Lord, to trust you and take you at your promise. We pray, God, for those on our prayer list, Lord, for those who are still recovering. Lord, think of Steve's nephew, Lord. We think of Steve's son, Lord, who's going off to Ukraine. God, that you just keep your hand of protection around both of them. Lord, just let them see your love. Let them, Lord, somehow in these situations, God, your name would be honored and glorified in that family. Lord, as we go into the worship service, we pray, God, for the words that are spoken, God, the songs that are sung, everything will be done in a way that bring glory and honor to your name. We just pray, God, that throughout this week, you give us an opportunity to be a blessing to other people. In Christ's name, amen. Thanks, guys. Next week, 26-27, we finish up the chapter.
I forgot to announce, if you guys aren't already helping the nursery, they need somebody for the third Sunday morning of each month.